I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow. Vice President Ford will be sworn in as president.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're taking a look at the biggest lies told by public figures whose reputations took a serious hit once the truth came out.
I never will forget the day we met. Girl, I'm gonna miss you.
Brian Williams claimed to have been on a military helicopter that was struck down.
So last week on Nightly News, Williams recounted a moment from his time embedded with the U.S. Army during the Iraq invasion.
The story actually started with a terrible moment a dozen years back during the invasion of Iraq, when the helicopter we were traveling in was forced down after being hit by an RPG.
The longtime anchor of NBC Nightly News had more than a little explaining to do in February of 2015. Williams, who had hosted the news program since 2004, came under fire for misrepresenting an incident that had occurred during his 2003 coverage of the Iraq War. The anchor claimed to have been flying in a military helicopter that was struck down by an RPG, which was almost immediately challenged by a flight engineer aboard one of the attacked helicopters.
One of the crew members of that helicopter challenged Williams with this Facebook post. "Sorry, I don't remember you being on my aircraft. I do remember you walking up about an hour after we had landed to ask me what had happened." Other crew members confirmed this discrepancy to the military magazine Stars and Stripes.
Lance Reynolds, the engineer in question, revealed that Williams had been traveling on a different helicopter that had to make an emergency landing for different reasons. Although Williams apologized, the damage was done, and he was demoted to breaking news anchor for MSNBC.
On this broadcast last week, in an effort to honor and thank a veteran who protected me and so many others after a ground fire incident in the desert during the Iraq War invasion, I made a mistake in recalling the events of 12 years ago. It did not take long to hear from some brave men and women in the air crews.
Steve Rannazzisi's actual whereabouts on September 11th, 2001.
Trending online this morning, a comedian is apologizing for a 14-year-long lie about his September 11th experience.
Outside of his supporting role on the cult sitcom The League, comedian Rannazzisi will be most familiar to the general populace for having lied about evading certain death during the 9/11 terrorist attacks in New York City. As Rannazzisi's story went, he worked for investment firm Merrill Lynch and was in the South Tower of the World Trade Center during the events of 9/11.
Few small details have changed over the years. For instance, in one interview, he didn't see the second plane hit, he heard it.
And then I heard the plane hit our tower.
His route home changes too.
We had to walk across the Brooklyn Bridge back to Brooklyn where we lived.
Oh my God. Later, a different bridge.
I walked across the Manhattan Bridge.
The twist? Not only was Rannazzisi nowhere near the South Tower at that time, but according to the New York Times, he had been working in Midtown that day, and not for Merrill Lynch, which has no record of his employment and had no offices in either tower.
In a series of tweets, he admits to lying about escaping from one of the World Trade Center towers on September 11th. He says the lie was, quote, profoundly disrespectful, and he asked for forgiveness.
Ryan Lochte and the Rio robbery.
We're learning more about that scary robbery at gunpoint of Olympic gold medal swimmer Ryan Lochte. Robbed at the Olympics, reads the New York Daily News front page. Lochte and loaded, says the New York Post. The International Olympic Committee is being accused of a cover-up.
In one fell swoop, six-time Olympic gold medalist Lochte went from American hero to international pariah. While attending the 2016 Summer Olympics in Rio de Janeiro, Lochte and a host of other Olympic swimmers reported having been held at gunpoint by armed robbers who falsely identified themselves as police officers.
Whether you call it a robbery, whether you call it extortion, or us paying just for the damages, like, we don't know. All we know is that there was a gun pointed in our direction and we were demanded to give money.
Shortly thereafter, the holes in their story were made crystal clear. They had vandalized a gas station in nearby Barra da Tijuca, and those armed robbers were security guards attempting to control the heavily intoxicated athletes. While charges in Brazilian court against Lochte were dismissed, all of the Olympians involved faced severe repercussions, including, but not limited to, being forced to pay a fine, community service, and losing out on lucrative sponsorships.
For Olympic swimmer Ryan Lochte, the road from Rio has been a rocky one, following the gas station scandal that shook the 2016 Summer Games. In a new interview with ESPN The Magazine, Lochte says, "After Rio, I was probably the most hated person in the world. There were a couple of points where I was crying, thinking, if I go to bed and never wake up, fine.
Horia Baldwin's lack of Spanish ancestry.
How's married life?
Married life is really nice. You know, it feels different. It really feels different. But I didn't think it was going to be different, but it feels quite different.
What's the thing that surprised you the most?
I think just the fact that it feels different. You know, we like to say husband and wife a lot.
Baldwin, a yoga instructor and entrepreneur who's been married to actor Alex since 2012, had often presented herself as being of Spanish descent and having taken annual family trips to Spain as a child. While Baldwin's family heritage had gone pretty much unchecked throughout her years in the public eye, it all came crashing down in 2020 when video footage emerged of her alternating between American and Spanish accents.
We have very few ingredients. We have tomatoes, we have how do you say it? Cucumbers. We have red pepper.
Most damningly, and bizarrely of all, was a video in which Baldwin appeared unable to remember the English word for cucumber. Baldwin eventually half apologized, claiming that she identified as white and that she came from a diverse ethnic background, which does not demonstrably contain any Spanish ancestry.
I am that person that if I've been speaking a lot of Spanish, I, tend to mix them, and if I'm speaking more English, or doing a lot of English, then I mix that. It's one of those things that's always been I've been a little insecure about over different times. And, when I try to work, I try to enunciate a little bit more. But if I get nervous or upset or something, then I start to mix the two.
John Edwards refused to admit his extramarital affair.
John Edwards, the favorite son of Chapel Hill, North Carolina, is favored no more, at least by some of his former supporters.
I was disappointed. Very disappointed. You want to trust him and believe him, and just makes it kind of hard to believe anything that he says.
I'm disgusted, I'm disappointed, I'm just doggone angry.
North Carolina Senator John Edwards rose to fame as a fierce advocate for the American public. He was even the Democratic vice presidential nominee in 2004, alongside John Kerry, and his popularity helped to drive his 2008 presidential campaign. That public admiration came to a screeching halt in August 2008, when Edwards admitted to an extramarital affair that resulted in his fathering a child, after vehemently denying it for months.
He finally relented and took a DNA test, and it was at that time that he learned once and for all that he was the father of the child.
New details are emerging about Edwards' involvement in his 2-year-old daughter's life.
According to our sources, his wife Elizabeth met the child without the presence of her mother Riel being there.
The worst part of it all? Edwards' wife Elizabeth was sick with breast cancer the whole time. She eventually died in December of 2010. Edwards' sterling reputation was permanently tainted, a far cry from the rumors that he had been a top candidate to become Barack Obama's running mate.
John Edwards now has been indicted by a grand jury in North Carolina. Former presidential candidate, of course. He's been indicted on charges of illegally using his campaign contributions to cover up his extramarital affair with Riel Hunter, also to hide the fact that she fathered his child.
Jussie Smlette and the hate crime that never was.
Just say to me, and I see the attacker masked, and he said, "This MAGA country punches me right in the face." So I punched his ass back. And then we started tussling. It was very icy. And we ended up tussling by the stairs. Fighting. There was a second person involved who was kicking me in my back.
Here's one lie that still completely defies all logic. Actor Smlette was on top of the world, with a primo starring role on Fox's musical drama series Empire that had been praised for its positive depiction of a gay black man. Then, in January of 2019, for reasons that remain hard to understand, Smlette claimed that he had been assaulted in Chicago and that the perpetrators had called him racist and homophobic slurs.
26 Chicago police officers spent 3,000 hours of time costing the city well over $100,000 for a fake crime that never occurred, and by the way, a fake crime that denigrates what a real hate crime is.
A police investigation into the matter revealed that not only had Smlette paid his quote-unquote attackers to stage the attack, but that they were brothers who had appeared as extras on Empire. The actor and musician was eventually found guilty of 5 counts of felony disorderly conduct.
Would be easier if I had in fact done this to say that I did it. I wouldn't have spent almost $3 million of my own money. I would not have had a trial. No matter how much people are yelling in my face saying, "You're a liar, you're a liar, you're a liar." No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I don't want them to believe that, but if that is what they believe, that's on you.
Milli Vanilli wasn't actually Milli Vanilli.
Getting all the love I feel for you.
do when the musical talent you've signed turns out to just be a couple of pretty faces? In producer Frank Farian's case, you fake it till you make it, by just having those pretty faces lip-sync to pre-recorded tracks by actual musicians. Farian, the founder of Boney M, who was determined to make stars out of Fab Morvan and Rob Pilatus, was determined to keep the ruse up after they became fast household names.
Girl, you know it's true. I love you.
Despite winning the Grammy for Best New Artist in 1990, Morvan and Pilatus were forced to return the award after a 1990 Los Angeles Times expose brought the con to the public's attention. Subsequent attempts to stage a comeback were unsuccessful, and Pilatus later died in 1998.
It was just too much. I mean, he was asked to hide this huge, deep, dark secret, and I don't know what would have happened to me if I would have had the same problem.
Lance Armstrong's lack of sportsmanship.
Some breaking news now on Lance Armstrong. The global governing body of cycling has just announced moments ago it will ban Armstrong for life and strip him of his 7 tour titles.
Possibly the best known and most beloved professional cyclist of all time, Armstrong made history by winning the Tour de France a record 7 consecutive times, from 1999 to 2005. Although the athlete repeatedly denied partaking in doping during his career, even referring to himself as the most tested sportsman on the planet, he finally came clean about his substance use in 2013.
Do you owe David Walsh an apology?
That's a good question.
Do you owe David Walsh an apology, who for 13 years has pursued this story, who wrote for the Times, who's now written books about you and this entire process?
I'd apologize to David.
That admission didn't come without a fight. The United States Anti-Doping Agency had, the previous year, accused Armstrong of running a drug trafficking ring with former teammates. As a result, Armstrong was dropped by all of his sponsors, reportedly losing $75 million in a single day, and worst of all, was stripped of his Tour de France titles.
I don't know if it's fraud. You can call it whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter, right? I mean, it's fraud, betrayal, all of these things that we know people felt. That's on me, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make that right.
Bill Clinton didn't know the definition of is.
With Ms. Lewinsky, the statement that there was no sex of any kind, in any manner, shape, or form with President Clinton was an utterly false statement. Is that correct?
It depends upon what the meaning of the word is.
Yes.
This lie went over as well as the time President Clinton claimed that he had smoked cannabis as a young man, but never inhaled. Clinton carried out an illicit affair with 22-year-old White House intern Monica Lewinsky from 1995 to 97, which was exposed following Linda Tripp's leaking of that information to the press.
But I want to say one thing to the American people. I want you to listen to me. I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never.
The president repeatedly denied the affair, as well as having taken advantage of the power imbalance between the two. Finally, once circumstantial evidence all but placed a smoking gun in Clinton's hands in 1998, he admitted to an improper physical relationship. As a result, President Clinton was impeached by the House of Representatives, but acquitted by the Senate, serving the remainder of his term in office.
Now that the Senate has fulfilled its constitutional responsibility, bringing this process to a conclusion, I want to say again to the American people how profoundly sorry I am for what I said and did.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications.
Richard Nixon wasn't a crook.
I have never obstructed justice. And I think, too, that I can say that in my years of public life, that I welcome this kind of examination, because people have got to know whether or not their president is a crook. Well, I'm not a crook. I've earned everything I've got.
Maybe you saw this one coming, but how would you blame us for spotlighting perhaps the most infamous political falsehood of all time? 37th U.S. President Richard Nixon had long sought the nation's highest office and nearly threw in the towel altogether, following widely publicized electoral losses. However, his legacy was permanently damaged by the Watergate scandal, in which President Nixon conspired to illegally surveil the Democratic National Committee headquarters in Washington, D.C.
The Democratic National Committee is trying to solve a spy mystery.
It began before dawn Saturday when 5 intruders were captured by police inside the offices of the committee in Washington. The 5 men carried cameras and apparently had planted electronic bugs. One of them had several crisp new $100 bills in his pocket.
Although Nixon, like Clinton, tried to deny, the tireless work of the Washington Post's Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward revealed Nixon's deep involvement in the scandal. Nixon subsequently became the only president in U.S. history to resign.
I have never been a quitter. To leave office before my term is completed is abhorrent to every instinct in my body. But as president, I must put the interests of America first. America needs a full-time president and a full-time Congress, particularly at this time with problems we face at home and abroad.
Which celeb lie shocked you the most? Are there any we missed? Be sure to let us know in the comments below.
It's a tragedy for me to see the dream is over.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.